The chamber was silent. Not the comfortable silence of peace, but the heavy silence before a stormed out ambassador, James Okafor, stood completely alone in the center of the grand hall. Around him, rising in endless tiers that seemed to touch the stars themselves, sat 12,000 alien beings. Some had scales that glittered like diamonds. Others floated in containment spheres, filled with gases that would kill a human in seconds. A few were so large that their breathing shook the floor beneath his feet. This was the Galactic Council, the supreme authority of the known universe. They had ruled for 15,000 years. They had crushed rebellions from species that had traveled the stars when humanity still lived in caves. They had never lost. They had never been challenged. Until now. James kept his breathing steady. His black diplomatic uniform felt thin against the cold air of the chamber. Behind him, a holographic image of Earth rotated slowly. A small blue marble, fragile, beautiful, home to 8 billion souls, who were waiting to learn if they would live or die. The High Chancellor rose from his throne. His name was Vorath, and he was a creature of living stone. His body stood 4 meters tall, carved from what looked like black marble veined with molten gold. When he spoke, his voice rolled through the chamber like thunder. Human representative, you stand before this council to answer for crimes against galactic law. James did not respond. He waited. Vorath continued. 14 months ago, your species achieved faster than light travel. This was done without permission, without guidance, without respect for the treaties that govern all expansion in this galaxy. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. James caught fragments of translation. Arrogant, dangerous, animals. In the months since, your ships have entered 47 star systems claimed by council members. You have established colonies on 12 worlds. And when we sent enforcement vessels to correct these violations, you destroyed them. A murmur became a roar. Thousands of voices in hundreds of languages, all united in outrage. Vorath raised one massive hand, and silence fell instantly. The council has deliberated. Our decision is final. The High Chancellor's golden veins pulsed with light. Humanity will surrender all starships. Your colonies will be dismantled. Your population will be reduced to 500 million to prevent future expansion. And your species will be confined to your home system for the next 100,000 years. James felt the weight of those words. Reduced to 500 million. They were talking about killing 7.5 billion people. Furthermore, Vorath added, the military leaders responsible for destroying our vessels will be surrendered to face justice. This justice will be slow. It will be thorough. It will serve as an example to any species that might consider similar defiance. The chamber waited. Every eye and sensor was fixed on the small human standing alone in the center of the floor. You may now accept these terms, Vorath said. Speak your submission. James reached into his uniform pocket. Instantly, weapons powered up throughout the chamber. Defense systems locked onto him. 100 security officers prepared to fire. He pulled out a small data chip and held it up. High Chancellor, distinguished representatives, I have been authorized by the United Earth Government to deliver our official response. He placed the chip on the ancient pedestal before him. But first, I want to make sure you understand something. His voice was calm, steady. You studied our radio signals. You watched our broadcasts. You analyzed our history and saw a species that fights itself, that struggles with unity, that spent thousands of years in tribal warfare. He paused, and you concluded we were weak. Something in his tone made Vorath's stone plates shift uncomfortably. 14 months ago, you sent your ultimatum. Submit or die. You expected us to fragment, to argue, to bow before your superior numbers and technology. James smiled, and there was no warmth in it. You made a mistake, High Chancellor. You did something that no force in human history has ever accomplished. He activated the data chip. A hologram blazed to life above the pedestal. It showed a fleet. Not dozens of ships. Not hundreds. 12,000 warships, bristling with weapons that pulsed with strange energy. Arranged in perfect formation around the Council's home system, the chamber erupted into chaos. You gave 8 billion people a common enemy, James said over the screaming. And now you will negotiate with us as equals. Or you will not negotiate at all. Voreth's voice cut through the pandemonium. This is an act of war. You cannot threaten this council. We have ruled for 15,000 years. Then perhaps it is time for new leadership. James gestured to the hologram. This fleet appeared 3 hours ago. Your sensors did not detect our approach. Your weapons cannot identify our technology. And in exactly 40 minutes, unless I transmit a specific code, they will begin the systematic destruction of every military installation in this system. He looked up at the High Chancellor. Your move, far from the council chamber, aboard the flagship of the human fleet, Admiral Maria Santos watched the chaos unfold through a quantum-linked display. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen more than most people could imagine. He has their attention, she said quietly, her tactical officer. Commander David Home monitored the Council's fleet movements. They are scrambling, trying to get ships into position. But they are confused. Our signatures do not match anything in their databases. Good, let them wonder. Maria thought back to the day the Council's message had arrived. Humanity had learned 2 things in the same moment. They were not alone in the universe. And the universe had already decided their fate. The panic had been terrible. Riots, despair, governments threatening to collapse. But then something unexpected had happened. Something the Council had not predicted. Humanity had united. Every nation contributed. Every scientist, every engineer, every factory. 14 months of impossible work. 14 months of breakthroughs that should have taken centuries. The Council had sent observation drones to watch humanity submit. Those drones saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see. They never saw the shipyards hidden beneath the oceans. They never saw the weapons labs buried in mountains. They never detected the research facilities shielded by technology the Council did not know humans possessed. Back in the Council chamber, Voreth had finally restored order. You are bluffing, the High Chancellor declared. Your species does not have the resources for such a fleet. This is a deception. James shook his head slowly. High Chancellor, I am going to share something with you. A piece of human wisdom that your species never learned. He stepped forward. When you corner a predator, when you threaten its family, its home, everything it loves, something happens. The fear goes away. The calculations stop. All that remains is one simple truth. His voice dropped low. We would rather die fighting than live on our knees. He gestured again, and the hologram changed. It now showed something that made even Voreth take a step back. A map of the galaxy. But not the Council's map. This one showed the locations of their secret weapons platforms, their hidden fleet reserves, their emergency bunkers. Everything they thought no one else knew about. We have been watching you too, James said. We have been learning. And we have discovered that your power is not as absolute as you pretend. He highlighted a cluster of systems on the map. 23 species currently under your control. Species you conquered and enslaved. We have contacted them. They are ready. The chamber fell into shocked silence. You wanted to negotiate humanity's extinction, James continued. Instead, you will negotiate a new future for this galaxy. One where no species lives in chains. One where no world burns for daring to reach for the stars. He turned to leave. You have 39 minutes remaining, High Chancellor. Choose wisely. The doors closed behind him. And across the galaxy, 23 oppressed species receive the same message. Humanity stands. Will you? High Chancellor Voreth had not moved from his throne in 3 hours. His golden veins pulsed with agitation as he stared at the tactical display floating before him. The human fleet surrounded the Council's home system like a noose waiting to tighten around him. The Grand Hall had emptied of most delegates. Only the inner circle remained, the 7 species who truly ruled the galaxy from behind the scenes. They had gathered in the Chamber of Shadows, a private room where the real decisions were made. "This is impossible," hissed Selthra, the ambassador from the Vorthi Collective. Her species was a hive mind controlling 600 worlds. When she spoke, thousands of voices blended into one. Humans are primitives. They were throwing nuclear weapons at each other less than a century ago. They cannot have built this fleet. War Commander Bruthen of the Korathi Empire slammed his armored fist against the table. He was a massive creature, covered in thick plates of natural bone armor. His species lived for combat. I do not care how they built it. I want to destroy it. Give me 5,000 ships, and I will crush these insects. And lose 5,000 ships, replied Merchant Queen Solara of the Trade Syndicate. She was serpentine, her scales shifting through colors as she spoke. Did you not study the reports? Our sensors cannot identify their weapons. We do not know what we are fighting. Then we learn by fighting. Enough. Voreth's voice silenced them all. War Commander, you will have your chance. But first, we must understand what we face. He turned to the final member of the inner circle. Elder Keth of the Synthesis was ancient beyond measure. His body was a collection of crystalline structures that bent light in ways that hurt to observe. He had been part of the council since before any of them were born. Elder, you have been quiet. What do you see? Keth's crystals chimed softly. I see a species that should not exist. Their technology follows no known scientific path. It emerged too quickly, too completely. He paused. Someone helped them. Someone gave them the knowledge to build these weapons. Who? Selthra demanded. Who would dare? I do not know, but I intend to find out. Meanwhile, Ambassador James Okafor had been escorted to a waiting chamber. It was comfortable enough, with food synthesizers and a bed, but he knew he was a prisoner. The door was locked. Guards waited outside. He did not mind. He was exactly where he needed to be. A holographic display flickered to life before him. Admiral Santos appeared on the screen. Ambassador. Status report. They are scared, James said, and confused. They are arguing among themselves. Exactly what we predicted. Good. Our long-range sensors have detected fleet movements. They are pulling ships from across the galaxy, trying to reinforce this system. How long until they arrive? The first wave? 6 hours. The full strength of the Council fleet? 3 days. James nodded slowly. Then we have 3 days to convince them that fighting is not worth the cost. Can it be done? I do not know, but we have to try. The alternative is a war that could destroy everything. The display flickered, and a new face appeared. Dr. Amara Diallo, the architect of humanity's impossible technology. She was a physicist from Senegal, and she had achieved in 14 months what should have taken 1,000 years. Ambassador, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The Council is not just building a fleet. Our intelligence indicates they are activating something called the Terminus Protocol. We do not know exactly what it is, but the energy signatures are massive. If they finish charging it before negotiations conclude, how massive? Enough to sterilize a planet. Maybe an entire solar system. James closed his eyes. A weapon capable of destroying Earth, destroying everything they were fighting for. How long until it is ready? 72 hours. Maybe less. Then we need to move faster. He opened his eyes. There was no fear in them. Only determination. Dr. Diallo, I need you to send everything we have on the Terminus Protocol to the fleet. If negotiations fail, they need to be ready to destroy it. Understood. Admiral Santos, prepare our forces for possible combat. But do not fire unless fired upon. We still have a chance for peace. And if peace fails? James looked at the door of his prison cell. Then we show them why humanity survived when so many others fell. 6 hours later, the first Council reinforcements arrived. 2,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, taking positions around the human fleet. They did not attack. They waited. War Commander Bruthen watched from his command vessel, the Devastator. It was the largest ship in the Korathi fleet, armed with weapons that had conquered 100 worlds. Analysis complete, reported his tactical officer. The human ships are smaller than ours. Their hull designs are unknown. Their weapons signatures do not match anything in our databases. Unknown? Bruthen growled. How can they be unknown? We have cataloged every weapon in this galaxy. These weapons are not from this galaxy. Or if they are, they come from knowledge we have never encountered. Bruthen stared at the human fleet on his display. They hung in space like a wall of defiance, silent, waiting. They are brave, he admitted grudgingly. Stupid, but brave. Commander, we are receiving a transmission. From the human flagship, put it through. Admiral Santos appeared on screen. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. War Commander Bruthen. I am Admiral Maria Santos of the United Earth Defense Force. I understand you are eager for battle. Bruthen bared his teeth in what his species considered a smile. You understand correctly, human. I have crushed rebellions across 50 systems. Your little fleet does not frighten me. I did not contact you to frighten you. I contacted you to offer a warning. A warning? I know your reputation, Commander. You are a warrior. You respect strength. So I will speak to you with respect. Maria leaned forward. Your fleet outnumbers us 2 to 1. More reinforcements are coming. By pure numbers, you should win. And why do you warn me? Because numbers do not always decide battles. Because my people have spent 14 months preparing for exactly this moment. And because I want you to understand something before any weapons are fired. She paused. We are not like the other species you have conquered. We do not surrender. We do not break. And if you force us to fight, we will make you pay for every ship, every life, every moment of this war in blood and fire. Bruthen was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound. You have spirit, human. I will enjoy breaking it. Perhaps. Or perhaps I will break yours. The transmission ended. Bruthen turned to his tactical officer. Prepare the fleet for combat. We attack in 1 hour. Commander, our orders are to wait for the full fleet to arrive. I do not take orders from politicians. The humans have challenged us. We will answer. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Okafor had been summoned to hear the council's response to humanity's ultimatum. High Chancellor Vorath stood before him, flanked by the entire inner circle. We have considered your demands, Vorath said. Your request for equal representation. Your demand that we release all subjugated species. Your insistence that the Council change its fundamental nature. He paused. We reject all of it. James did not react. Furthermore, Vorath continued, we have decided that humanity cannot be trusted. You are too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to continue as you are. Then we have nothing more to discuss. On the contrary, we have a counteroffer. Vorath gestured, and a new hologram appeared. It showed Earth, peaceful and blue. Surrender your fleet. Surrender your technology. Accept our original terms, and we will allow your population to live, all 8 billion of them. And if we refuse, then the Terminus Protocol will be activated. Your planet will be reduced to ash. Your colonies will be destroyed. Your species will be erased from history. James looked at the hologram of Earth. He thought of everyone he loved, everyone waiting for news, everyone hoping. Then he thought of the future. A future where humanity bowed to tyrants, where their children and grandchildren lived in chains, where freedom was just a word in forgotten history books. High Chancellor, he said quietly, I am going to tell you something that I hope you will remember. Something that explains why your offer is worthless. He stepped forward. We are not fighting for our survival. We are fighting for something bigger. Something your council has forgotten in 15,000 years of rule. And what is that? The right to choose our own destiny. The right to be free. He looked up at the massive alien. You can kill us. You can destroy our world. But you cannot make us kneel. And if you try, you will discover that there are worse things than death. He turned and walked toward the door. Ambassador. Vorath called. What is your answer? James stopped at the threshold. We refuse. The doors closed behind him, and somewhere in the darkness of space, War Commander Bruthen gave the order to attack. The first plasma bolt streaked across the void like a spear of green fire. It was aimed directly at the human flagship, the Defiant. On any other day, against any other enemy, it would have been a killing blow. Passed through empty space. The Defiant was no longer there. War Commander Bruthen stared at his tactical display in confusion. Where did they go? Unknown, Commander. They simply vanished. The human fleet had not moved in any conventional sense. They had folded space itself, sliding sideways through dimensions that the Council did not even have names for. One moment they were in the path of the plasma mirage. The next moment they were everywhere else. And then they fired back. Admiral Maria Santos watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Defiant. Her hands were steady on the armrests of her command chair. Around her, her crew moved with practiced precision. Target the lead vessels, she ordered. Prometheus weapons. Full spread. The human weapons did not look like weapons. There were no beams. No projectiles. No explosions. Space simply collapsed around the target ships. It was as if reality itself decided they no longer existed. 800 Korathi warships ceased to exist in the first 30 seconds of the battle. Bruthen watched his fleet being erased. He had fought for 200 years. He had never seen anything like this. Fall back. He roared. All ships fall back. The Korathi fleet scattered. Some made it to faster-than-light travel and escaped. Others were not fast enough. By the time the battle ended, less than 400 ships remained of the 2,000 that had attacked. Admiral Santos did not smile. There was no joy in this. Ceasefire, she ordered. Let them go. Commander Holm looked up from his station. Admiral, we can pursue. We can destroy them all. No, we need survivors. We need witnesses. The galaxy needs to see that the Council can be beaten. She stared at the retreating ships. Today is not about victory. It is about sending a message. That message reached the Council chamber within the hour. High Chancellor Vorath listened to Bruthen's report in frozen silence. The War Commander's image flickered on the display. His bone armor cracked and scorched. 1,600 ships destroyed in less than 10 minutes, Bruthen said. His voice was hollow. Their weapons ignore our shields. Our sensors cannot track their movements. We were completely helpless. You attacked without authorization, Vorath said coldly. Against my direct orders. I am Korathi. We do not wait for permission to fight. Bruthan's eyes were haunted. But I have never seen anything like this. Their technology is beyond us. Far beyond us. Merchant Queen Solara leaned forward. Then perhaps we should consider negotiation after all. Negotiation? Selthra's 1,000 voices were shrill. After they humiliated us? After they destroyed 1,600 of our ships? They could have destroyed all of them. They chose not to. Solara's scales shifted to a contemplative blue. That shows restraint. That shows they still want peace. It shows weakness. Selthra snapped. If we had their weapons, we would have crushed them completely. And that, said a quiet voice, is exactly why you will lose. Everyone turned. Ambassador James Okafor stood in the doorway of the chamber. Guards flanked him, but he walked freely. Vorath rose from his throne. You were not summoned. No, but I have information you need to hear. James walked forward until he stood in the center of the chamber. The battle you just witnessed was not a victory. It was a demonstration. A demonstration of what? Of what happens if you continue down this path. James looked at each member of the inner circle in turn. We could have destroyed every ship in that fleet. We could destroy every ship you send against us. But that is not what we want. Then what do you want? Vorath demanded. I have told you. Equality. Freedom. A new order where no species lives in chains. James paused. But there is something else. Something I could not tell you before, because I did not have proof. He activated a holographic projector. This message arrived 2 hours ago. It was sent simultaneously to Earth and to 23 worlds under Council control. The hologram showed a star map. Points of light flickered across it, spreading like fire. The species you conquered are rising. The Velashi have seized their orbital stations. The Trellian are liberating their prison colonies. The Manthari have captured 3 Council weapons depots. Selthra made a sound like glass breaking. This is treason. This is freedom, James replied. The same freedom you tried to deny us. Vorath stepped down from his throne, his massive stone body casting shadows across the floor. You have started a war that will consume this galaxy. No, you started this war when you decided that some species deserve to rule and others deserve to serve. James met the High Chancellor's golden eyes without flinching. We are simply finishing it. You cannot win. Even with your technology, even with your rebellion, we have resources from 9,000 worlds. We will crush you eventually. Perhaps. But consider the cost. How many ships will you lose? How many worlds will burn? How many of your own people will die? James shook his head. And for what? To preserve a system that only benefits those at the top? He gestured to the hologram. The fire is already spreading. You can try to stamp it out, system by system. Or you can accept that the old order is over and help build something better. Vorath was silent for a long moment. His golden veins pulsed slowly. You ask us to surrender everything we have built. I ask you to evolve, to become something greater than what you are. And if we refuse, then the war continues, and everyone loses. The High Chancellor turned away. Leave us. We must deliberate. James bowed slightly and walked toward the door. But before he reached it, Elder Keth spoke. Human, wait. James turned. The ancient crystalline being moved toward him, light bending around his form. I have been watching you, Keth said, studying your technology, your strategy, your philosophy. His crystals chimed softly. You are more than you appear. Much more. What do you mean? Your weapons are not just advanced. They should not be possible. The principles behind them have never existed in this galaxy. Keth's form shifted. Someone taught you. Someone gave you knowledge that was lost long ago. James kept his expression neutral. I do not know what you are talking about. I think you do. And I think that whoever helped you has their own agenda. One that may not align with your noble goals of freedom and equality. Is that a threat? It is a warning. From one ancient being who has seen empires rise and fall to a young species that does not yet understand the forces it is playing with, Keth retreated. Be careful, Ambassador. The galaxy is older than you know, and some secrets are dangerous to uncover. James left the chamber with those words echoing in his mind. Aboard the Defiant, Admiral Santos received his report. Elder Keth knows something, James said. He suspects we had help. Does it matter? The technology works. The rebellion is spreading. It matters if whoever helped us has plans we do not know about. James sat heavily in a chair. Dr. Diallo, what do we know about the architects? Dr. Diallo's face appeared on screen. The architects? That is just a legend. Stories that some species tell about beings who created life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. Legends often have some truth at their core. Even if the architects existed, they are long gone. There is no evidence that they had anything to do with our technology. James thought of the strange dreams he had been having since the project began. Dreams of vast structures floating in space. Dreams of voices speaking in languages he should not understand. Dreams that felt more like memories. Maybe, he said, but I think we need to find out for certain. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Earth. Dr. Diallo had received coordinates to a system that did not appear on any star chart dot, and with the coordinates came a single line of text dot. You have done well. Now it is time to learn the truth. James stared at the message for a long moment. Admiral, he said finally, I need a ship. A fast one. There is somewhere I need to go. Ambassador, we need you here for negotiations. There will be no more negotiations until I understand what we are truly dealing with. He looked up at her. Something is coming. Something bigger than the Council. Bigger than this war. And if we do not prepare for it, nothing else will matter. Santos studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Take the Prometheus. It is the fastest ship in the fleet. Thank you, Admiral. James. She stopped him at the door. Whatever you find out there, whatever truth you discover, remember who you are. Remember what we are fighting for. He smiled grimly. I will. I promise. As the Prometheus launched into the unknown, the war continued. Rebellions spread across Council space. Ships clashed in battles that lit up the darkness. And somewhere in the depths of space, something ancient began to stir. The truth was waiting, and it would change everything. Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a star system that should not exist. There were no stars on any chart, no records in any database, nothing to indicate that this corner of space held anything at all. Yet here it was. A dying red sun surrounded by the wreckage of ancient worlds. And at the center of it all, something impossible. Ambassador James Okafor stared through the viewport at a structure larger than Earth itself. It hung in the void like a frozen thought, made of materials that seemed to shift between solid and light. Towers rose from its surface that could have held entire civilizations. Docking bays gaped open like the mouths of sleeping giants. What is this place? Whispered Lieutenant Torres, the ship's pilot. I think, James said slowly, we are about to find out. A guidance beam locked onto the Prometheus and drew them into one of the massive bays. The ship settled onto a platform that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Atmosphere readings showed breathable air. Gravity was Earth normal. James opened the hatch and stepped out. A figure was waiting for him. It looked human. Completely, perfectly human. A woman with silver hair and dark skin, wearing robes that shifted like liquid metal. She smiled. Ambassador Okafor. I am called Vera. Welcome to the sanctuary. You look human. I appear in whatever form will be most comfortable for visitors. Your species finds human faces reassuring. She gestured toward the interior of the station. Please, walk with me. There is much to discuss. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. James saw chambers filled with technology beyond comprehension. Gardens growing plants that glowed with inner light. Libraries containing knowledge from 1,000,000 worlds. This station has existed for 3,000,000 years, Vera explained. It was built by my people, the ones you call the architects, so the legends are true. Partly, we did seed life throughout this galaxy. We guided evolution. We watched civilizations rise. Her voice grew sad. And we watched them fall. What happened? The council happened. Or rather, the species that became the council. Vera stopped before a vast window overlooking the red sun. When they discovered our existence, they feared us. They could not accept that other beings had shaped their development. So they hunted us, destroyed our worlds, killed almost all of us. Almost? A few survived. Went into hiding. We have watched from the shadows ever since, waiting for a chance to restore balance. James felt cold despite the comfortable temperature. And that chance is humanity. Yes, Vera turned to face him. When the council threatened your species, we saw an opportunity. Your people have something unique, something we did not engineer. An adaptability, a resilience, a refusal to surrender that has never existed in any other species we created. You gave us the technology. We gave you the knowledge to develop it yourself. The Prometheus engines, the spatial folding weapons. All of it came from our archives. She paused. But we could not simply hand you victory. You had to earn it. You had to prove you were worthy. Worthy of what? Of changing the galaxy. Of building something better than the council ever could. James was silent for a long moment. He thought of everyone who had died to make this moment possible. The scientists who had worked themselves to death. The soldiers who had given everything. 8 billion people who had united against impossible odds. Why should I trust you? He asked finally. You manipulated us. Used us for your own purposes. You are right to be suspicious. We have made mistakes. We should have intervened against the council centuries ago. We should have protected the species they conquered instead of watching from safety. Vera's form flickered with something like shame. We were cowards. We chose survival over justice. And now? Now we want to make amends. We cannot undo the past, but we can help build a better future. How? She led him to another chamber. This one was darker, filled with displays showing scenes from across the galaxy. James saw battles raging, rebellions spreading, the council mobilizing every resource they had. The war is escalating, Vera said. The council is preparing to activate something called the Terminus Protocol, a weapon capable of sterilizing entire star systems. We know about that, but do you know what it truly is? Vera zoomed in on a display showing a massive installation hidden in the Obsidian Nebula. The Terminus Protocol is not just a weapon. It is a signal that activates dormant programming in every species we created. James felt his blood run cold. What kind of programming? A genetic switch. When activated, it suppresses the capacity for resistance, for defiance. Species that were ready to fight become docile, compliant. The rebellions end not through victory, but through erasure of the will to fight, That is monstrous. It was our greatest failure. We built it as a safeguard, a way to prevent galactic wars. We never intended for it to be used this way. Vera's form solidified with determination. But there is hope. The programming does not work on humanity. Why not? Because your aggression, your independence, evolved naturally. It was not engineered. You are immune to the Terminus Protocol. She met his eyes. You are the only species in this galaxy that cannot be controlled. James thought of Admiral Santos, of Dr. Diallo, of everyone who had refused to surrender, even when surrender seemed like the only option. He had always known humans were stubborn. He had not known it might save the galaxy. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "We need you to destroy the Terminus Protocol before it can be activated. Our technology can help, but we are too few to do it ourselves." Vera touched his arm. "Will you help us? Not for our sake, but for every species that will be enslaved if that weapon is used." Before James could answer, an alarm echoed through the station. "What is that?" Vera's face went pale. "We are being tracked. The Council has found us." She rushed to a control panel. A holographic display showed dozens of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel around the station. Council warships. And leading them, a vessel marked with the symbols of the synthesis. "Elder Keth," James breathed. He followed me. "The synthesis has been hunting us for 3,000 years. They are the Council's eyes and ears." Vera began activating systems throughout the station. "You must leave. Take the Prometheus and warn your fleet. What about you? We will hold them off as long as we can. The station has defenses, but they were never designed for this kind of assault." She pressed something into his hand. A small crystal that pulsed with inner light. "This contains everything. All our knowledge. All our technology. Everything humanity needs to win this war. I cannot just leave you. You must. Humanity is more important than any of us. You are the galaxy's last hope." She pushed him toward the door. "Go, now." James ran. Behind him, he heard the station coming to life. Weapons powering up. Shields engaging. The ancient architects making their last stand against the enemies who had hunted them for millennia. He reached the Prometheus and threw himself into the pilot's seat. Torres was already warming up the engines. What happened in there? Everything changed. James gripped the crystal in his hand. "Get us out of here." Maximum speed. The Prometheus launched from the docking bay just as the first Council weapons struck the station. James watched through the rear viewport as the sanctuary lit up with defensive fire. Ancient weapons clashed with Council technology. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. Then the station activated something he had never seen. A wave of energy spread outward, catching the Council ships. They did not explode. They simply stopped. Systems shut down. Ships went dark and began drifting. It was the architect's last gift. A weapon that disabled instead of destroyed. But Elder Keth's ship had stayed beyond the wave's range. It turned to pursue the Prometheus. "He is following us," Torres reported. "He will catch us before we reach the fleet." James looked at the crystal in his hand. The sum of 3 million years of knowledge. The key to saving the galaxy. Then we do not go to the fleet. Not directly. He began plotting a new course. We go somewhere Elder Keth will not expect. Where? James smiled grimly. To the Obsidian Nebula. We are going to destroy the Terminus Protocol ourselves. Behind them, the Sanctuary continued to fight. And as James watched, he saw escape pods launching. The architects were not all dead. Some had survived. The war was far from over. But for the first time, James truly believed they could win. The Obsidian Nebula was a graveyard of stars. Dust and debris from ancient supernovas swirled through the void, blocking light and sensors alike. It was the perfect hiding place for something the Council never wanted the galaxy to find. The Terminus Protocol installation hung at the nebula's heart. It was massive beyond comprehension. Towers of black metal rose from a central core that pulsed with terrible energy. Even from a distance, James could feel its wrongness. This was a weapon designed to enslave the mind itself. Readings show the protocol is 70% charged, Lieutenant Torres reported. At current rate, it will be fully operational in 8 hours. Then we have 8 hours to destroy it. The Prometheus was small, fast, and running silent. But they were not alone. Elder Keth's ship had followed them into the nebula. And according to long-range scans, the Council was mobilizing its entire fleet to protect their ultimate weapon. James activated his communicator. Admiral Santos. Do you copy? Static. Then a voice. Ambassador. Where are you? We lost contact hours ago. I am at the Obsidian Nebula. The Terminus Protocol is here, and it is nearly ready. You need to bring the fleet. James, that is suicide. The Council has 10,000 ships converging on that location. I know, but I have something they did not expect. He held up the crystal Vera had given him. The architects gave us everything. New weapons. New shields. Information on every weakness the Council has ever had. Silence on the line. How long until you can get here? James asked. 4 hours. Maybe less if we push the engines past safety limits. Do it. I will keep the protocol from activating until you arrive. James ... Santos's voice was heavy. You are one ship against an empire. I am one human who refuses to kneel. That has always been enough. He cut the transmission. Lieutenant, he said to Torres, take us in. Silent running. We are going to do as much damage as possible before the fleet arrives. The Prometheus slipped deeper into the nebula. Around them, Council ships were taking positions. Thousands of vessels forming a defensive sphere around the installation. But they were looking outward, expecting an attack from the human fleet. They were not expecting a single ship to sneak in from the shadows. James used the crystal's knowledge to identify weak points in the installation. Power conduits, shield generators, the central transmission array that would broadcast the enslaving signal. If they could destroy even one critical system, they could delay the protocol long enough for reinforcements. There, he pointed at a section of the installation that seemed less defended than the others. The secondary power core. If we hit that, we can reduce their charging rate. It is still protected by at least 50 ships. Then we need a distraction. James thought for a moment. Then he activated a wide-band transom. Ishin. Attention Council forces. This is Ambassador James Okafor of the United Earth Government. I am transmitting the true history of the architects. I am revealing the lies your council has told you for 15,000 years. Every ship in the nebula turned toward his signal. Your leaders told you the architects were enemies, that they had to be destroyed for the galaxy's safety. That was a lie. He began broadcasting data from the crystal, images of the architects creating life, records of the council's genocide, proof of the Terminus Protocol's true purpose. They did not fear the architects because they were dangerous. They feared them because they represented a truth the council could not accept. That no species has the right to rule over others. That freedom is not a privilege to be granted by the powerful. Council ships were converging on his position. But James noticed something else. Some ships were slowing. Officers were questioning orders. The truth was spreading. In 3 hours and 47 minutes, the Terminus Protocol will activate. It will enslave every species the architects ever created. Every rebellion will end. Every dream of freedom will die. James paused. Unless you help us stop it. Enough. A new voice cut through the transmission. Elder Keth's crystalline form appeared on screen. Human, you do not understand what you are doing. The architects are not saviors. They abandoned this galaxy. They watched while civilizations burned. They made mistakes. So did we. But they are trying to make amends. Amends? Keth's form flickered with ancient fury. They could have stopped the Council at any time. They could have prevented the suffering of billions. Instead, they hid like cowards. And what did you do, Elder? You watched. You recorded. You served the Council for 3,000 years. James met the ancient being's gaze. At least the architects are fighting now. At least they chose a side. I chose survival. As should you. Survival without freedom is not life. It is existence. And humans would rather die than merely exist. Keth was silent for a long moment. Then you will die, Ambassador. And your species will be erased. The Council ships opened fire. What followed was a battle that would be remembered for millennia. The Prometheus was a single vessel against thousands, but it moved like nothing the Council had ever seen. It folded through space, appearing and disappearing, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could connect. James piloted with skills he did not know he possessed. The crystal was not just knowledge. It was connection. He could feel the architect technology responding to his thoughts, anticipating his needs, protecting him in ways that seemed impossible. He destroyed 2 shield generators, then 3 power conduits. The installation's charging rate slowed, buying precious time, but even impossible luck runs out eventually. A plasma bolt caught the Prometheus as it emerged from a fold. The ship shuddered. Alarm screamed. Torres slumped over her console, unconscious from the impact. James dragged himself to the controls. The ship was dying. Weapons offline. Engines failing. They were drifting toward the installation with no way to escape. This is how it ends? He whispered. Then he saw it. The main fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the nebula. 12,000 human ships, enhanced with architect technology, cutting through the Council's defensive line like a blade through paper. Admiral, Santus's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Ambassador, we are here. Hold on. The battle became a war. Human ships engaged Council vessels across the nebula. Prometheus weapons erased entire squadrons. Space itself seemed to tear apart from the violence, and at the center of it all, James Okafor drifted toward the Terminus Protocol installation. He looked at the crystal in his hand. He thought of Vera's words, of the architect's sacrifice, of everything humanity had fought for. Then he understood what he had to do. The Prometheus still had one working system. The Prometheus core, the engine that folded space itself. It was not designed as a weapon. But anything could be a weapon if you were desperate enough. James plotted a course directly into the heart of the installation. Admiral, he transmitted, I am going to destroy the Terminus Protocol. I need you to keep the Council ships off me for 30 seconds. James, what are you planning? Something that will work. Trust me. He pushed the throttle forward. The Prometheus lurched toward the installation, trailing fire and debris. Council ships tried to intercept, but human vessels cut them down. 20 seconds. James could see the transmission array now. The heart of the enslaving signal. If he could destroy that, the protocol would be useless. 10 seconds. He activated the Prometheus core's overload sequence. The small singularity at the ship's heart began to expand, consuming reality around it. 5 seconds. James closed his eyes and thought of Earth, of everyone he loved, of the future they would have because of what he was about to do. The Prometheus struck the transmission array. The overloading singularity met the protocol's energy core, and for one brief moment, a new sun was born in the darkness of the Obsidian Nebula. The terminus protocol was destroyed. James Okafor was gone. The shockwave rippled through the nebula, disabling ships on both sides. When sensors cleared, the installation was nothing but rubble. The Council fleet, already broken by the human assault, began to surrender. High Chancellor Vorath watched from his command vessel as everything he had built crumbled to ash. "It is over," he said quietly. "We have lost." 1 week later, the galaxy gathered in a different kind of assembly. The Grand Chamber was still there, but it looked different now. Human flags flew beside the banners of 23 newly freed species. Representatives from worlds that had been enslaved for millennia stood as equals for the first time. Admiral Maria Santos stood where Ambassador Okafor had stood, in the center of the petitioner's circle. But she was not petitioning. She was announcing. The old council is dissolved. In its place, we establish the Galactic Assembly, an equal partnership between all species. No rulers, no subjects, only citizens. Vorath, stripped of his title but not his dignity, stepped forward. And what becomes of those who serve the old order? That is for the Assembly to decide. But we do not seek revenge. We seek justice. And more importantly, we seek peace. She paused, looking around the chamber. A man named James Okafor once told me that humanity did not fight for survival. We fought for something bigger, for the right to choose our own destiny. Her voice caught slightly. He gave his life to make that choice possible. For humans, for every species in this galaxy. She raised her hand. Today, we honor his sacrifice by building the future he believed in. A future where no world lives in fear, where no species is told they do not deserve freedom, where every being has the right to reach for the stars. Across the chamber, thousands of beings rose to their feet. Human, alien, former enemies standing together as something new. "The war is over," Santos declared. "Let the future begin." Far from the chamber, on a small blue world called Earth, 8 billion people looked up at the sky. They had been told they were too primitive to matter, too young to survive, too weak to fight. They had proven the galaxy wrong, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, drifting among the stars, the escape pods from the Architect's Sanctuary found their way to new homes. Vera and her people had survived. They would help humanity build a better galaxy. The old order had pushed too far. Humanity had refused to negotiate, and nothing would ever be the same.